Well, buckle up, America, because it seems a significant portion of you have decided that the whole government by the people, for the people thing is worth shouting about. And shout you have. The 50501 movement, a rather catchy name if you ask me, has exploded onto the scene, and their message is clear: no kings. This isn't some niche historical reenactment society suddenly getting very vocal about the monarchy. No, this is about President Trump and yes, Elon Musk. In early 2025 it became abundantly clear that patience had run out. We're talking protests in all 50 states, a coordinated symphony of dissatisfaction, suggesting that a lot of folks are looking at the current power structures and thinking, hang on, this wasn't in the brochure. It's a movement born out of a growing unease that the steering wheel of the country might have been quietly handed over to a couple of guys who perhaps see checks and balances as more of a mild inconvenience than a cornerstone of democracy, which is, slightly concerning. The sheer scale and breadth of these demonstrations are something to behold. This isn't just about one specific, easily digestible complaint that can be neatly packaged into a 30-second news soundbite. Oh no. We're dealing with a veritable smorgasbord of grievances, a multi-course meal of what the actual heck is going on. Many participants feel that the very foundations of democratic principles are being systematically eroded, chipped away like a sculptor who's decided the Statue of Liberty needs fewer inconvenient rights. The central anxiety seems to revolve around the perception that two individuals, one the president elected through a system that some days feels like a particularly cruel game show, and the other, a billionaire tech mogul who, last I checked, wasn't on any ballot, are wielding an alarming amount of influence over the nation's destiny. It's like watching a buddy cop film where the buddies are rewriting the Constitution on a cocktail napkin, and no one else gets a say. And the name 50501? It stands for 50 protests, 50 states, one movement, a testament to its unifying ambition and its deeply grassroots origins. This wasn't cooked up in some gleaming high-rise office by a committee of well-paid strategists. No, this ferment began in the digital town squares of social media, in late-night forum discussions, amongst ordinary citizens who looked at the flurry of executive orders and thought, this seems a lot. It's the political equivalent of a flash mob. But instead of synchronized dancing to a pop song, they're demanding accountability and a functioning government. Frankly, their choreography of dissent, while perhaps less aesthetically pleasing than a boy band, carries a tad more civic weight. The movement's power lies in its organic spread, a wildfire of concern fanned by shared anxieties and a collective desire for something better, or at least something less alarming. At its core, the 50501 movement is a visceral rejection of what many perceive as a creeping autocracy, and the corrosive effects of unchecked influence, whether that influence is wielded from the Oval Office or a Silicon Valley boardroom. People aren't just mildly annoyed, they are genuinely afraid. They're worried about their federal jobs, as Suzanne from Maryland expressed. Fearing for her husband's livelihood amidst talk of mass firings. They're anxious about their access to health care, a concern voiced by Anita Gilmore, also from Maryland, for her son's federal coverage. They're troubled by the potential misuse of their personal data and the steady dismantling of institutions designed to serve and protect them. This isn't simply about disagreeing with a particular policy. It's a profound questioning of who holds power and whether that power is being exercised responsibly. They're effectively shouting, is anyone actually flying this plane? And if so, do they even have a license? The genesis of the 50501 movement can be traced back to the simmering discontent of late 2024, a period where President Trump's executive orders began to fall like a relentless hailstorm. It started, as so many modern uprisings do, not with a bang, but with a click. Discussions ignited on social media platforms, and a dedicated subreddit, r50501, quickly became a digital rallying point for concerned citizens. It was a classic case of the internet doing what it does best, connecting disparate individuals who shared a common feeling that something was profoundly amiss. One person typed, "Is anyone else deeply troubled by the sheer volume of these executive orders?" and discovered that yes, indeed, a vast number of people were, leading to the realization that collective action might be more effective than individual doom-scrolling. This digital murmur soon grew into an undeniable roar. The movement rapidly transitioned from online forums to physical streets, marking its presence with a series of impactful protests. By February 5, 2025, a date that will likely be etched in the annals of American activism, The 50501 movement claimed participation in a staggering 80 cities across all 50 states. Then came President's Day, February 17th, a day traditionally reserved for mattress sales and historical reflection. Thousands, however, chose a different form of observance, gathering in Washington, D.C. at the Capitol Reflecting Pool, a location heavy with symbolism. Similar scenes unfolded nationwide, with signs proclaiming "Not my billionaires" in Knoxville and Iowans at their state house demanding President Musk must go. The message was clear: the people were watching, and they were not impressed with the current programming. As winter thawed into spring, the movement's momentum only intensified. April 5th saw a successful hands-off rally, the specifics of which underscored the broad range of concerns, from government overreach to the protection of public services. Then, on April 19th, the 50501 network coordinated over 400 events. These weren't just marches and rallies. They included environmental cleanups, community food drives, and educational teach-ins, demonstrating a commitment not only to protest, but also to constructive action and mutual aid. This multifaceted approach showcased a sophisticated understanding that challenging the status quo requires both raising voices in opposition and actively building the kind of communities people want to live in. It was activism with a side of, and while we're at it, let's plant some trees and make sure everyone gets fed. Remarkably, this nationwide mobilization occurred without a traditional centralized leadership structure. The 50501 movement prides itself on its grassroots nature, emphasizing nonviolence, inclusivity, and peaceful conflict resolution. It operates more like a decentralized network of interconnected local chapters and individual activists, all united by a common set of principles and grievances. While organizations like Political Revolution formally joined forces in early 2025, providing some logistical support, the movement's strength lies in its distributed power. This makes it incredibly difficult for opponents to decapitate or discredit, as there's no single figurehead to target. It's less an army with a general and more a sprawling, highly motivated neighborhood watch committee for democracy itself, fueled by coffee and a deep-seated concern for the republic. The list of grievances fueling the 50501 protests against the Trump administration is, to put it mildly, extensive. At the forefront are the president's sweeping executive orders, which protesters argue have led to chaos and instability. There's widespread anger over mass firings across various federal agencies and the aggressive downsizing of the federal workforce, creating an atmosphere of fear and uncertainty for countless public servants. Specific actions like the shutting down of Social Security offices have had immediate, tangible, and devastating impacts on vulnerable citizens who rely on these services. It's not just abstract policy shifts, it's about people suddenly finding the support systems they depend on vanishing, as if the government decided to play a cruel game of hide-and-seek with essential services. Beyond the administrative upheaval, the Trump administration's policy agenda has drawn significant fire. Protesters point to legislation that acknowledges only two genders, viewing it as a direct attack on LGBTQ+ rights and a regressive step for civil liberties. The administration's hardline stance on immigration, leading to increased deportations and family separations, has sparked moral outrage. Furthermore, the pressuring of allied countries coupled with drastic budget cuts to critical areas like healthcare and education has led to accusations that the administration is actively dismantling key government institutions and undermining America's standing both domestically and internationally. These aren't just minor disagreements over budgetary allocations. These are perceived as fundamental assaults on the nation's social fabric and its core values, leaving many to wonder what foundation isn't being shaken. Then there's Elon Musk, a figure who, despite holding no elected office, has become a central target of the protests. Critics are particularly alarmed by his significant influence in spearheading cuts to vital government programs. Reports suggest Musk's advisory role has led to reductions in funding for crucial areas like cancer research and nutrition assistance programs for underprivileged children, decisions that protesters see as both cruel and short-sighted. The creation of his unofficial Department of Government Efficiency, ominously nicknamed DOGE, has raised serious concerns about transparency, accountability, and potential conflicts of interest. The fear that Musk's team could gain access to sensitive personal data from the IRS and other federal agencies has only amplified the public's distrust, making DOGE sound less like a cute meme and more like a dystopian surveillance program. Ultimately, the core demand of the 50501 movement, encapsulated in their No King slogan, is twofold: President Trump's impeachment and Elon Musk's removal from any position of federal influence. Protesters argue that neither an elected president nor an unelected billionaire should be allowed to wield such concentrated and seemingly unchecked power. The chants heard in Washington, D.C., "Where is Congress?" and "Do your job," are a direct appeal to the legislative branch to reassert its authority and fulfill its constitutional obligations. Ezra Levin, co-founder of Indivisible, minced no words when he described Musk as a particularly heinous villain in this unfolding drama, highlighting the deep animosity towards individuals perceived to be subverting democratic processes for personal or ideological gain. The movement is, in essence, a desperate plea for the restoration of accountability. The sheer volume and persistence of the 50501 protests have undeniably begun to reverberate through the corridors of power, particularly among Democratic officials who find themselves under increasing pressure from their constituents. One notable instance occurred on February 10, 2025, when, following a significant protest, an impressive 16 out of 17 Democratic members of Congress present at a meeting pledged to withhold their votes on any funding bills that supported the Trump administration's controversial agenda. This was a significant, if symbolic, victory for the movement, demonstrating that organized public pressure can indeed influence legislative behavior. It suggests that at least some politicians are listening, or at the very least are realizing that ignoring tens of thousands of angry voters might not be the wisest career move. However, this increased pressure has not been universally welcomed. Reports have surfaced of some Democratic officials privately grumbling about the relentless demands from activist groups like Indivisible and Move On, organizations that have played a key role in mobilizing protesters. While public pronouncements often voice support for civic engagement, the behind-the-scenes sentiment can sometimes be one of exasperation. This internal friction highlights the delicate dance politicians must perform between representing their energized base and navigating the often compromise-laden realities of Washington. It seems the system is indeed feeling the heat, and for some that heat is getting a little too uncomfortable, which is precisely the point of such widespread vocal dissent. Despite any official discomfort, the tangible impact of the movement continues to grow. Indivisible has reported a significant surge in new chapter registrations, indicating an expanding grassroots infrastructure. Republican senators such as Lisa Murkowski of Alaska have reportedly received a high volume of calls from constituents specifically concerned about Elon Musk's influence and his Doge initiative. Perhaps one of the more amusing yet telling consequences is that Musk's Doge meetings were reportedly shifted to online-only formats, presumably to avoid the optics of protesters greeting attendees. These small victories from engaged citizens like Suzanne in Maryland fighting for her husband's job security show that sustained, focused action can yield results, even if it's just forcing powerful people to conduct their controversial business behind more closed doors. Looking ahead, the 50501 movement shows no signs of abating. Organizers like POTUS Black, a key figure in the Washington, D.C. chapter, have publicly stated that the movement is only getting started, promising more demonstrations and continued pressure. Beyond protests, the movement aims to build a robust social support web for communities most affected by the administration's policies, underscoring a commitment to resilience and mutual aid. The critical question remains: can the 50501 movement sustain its remarkable momentum and translate the undeniable energy from the streets into lasting systemic political change? Or will the forces they oppose simply weather the storm? The future of American governance may well hinge on the answer, as these citizens continue their fight to ensure no kings, crowned or corporate, reign unchecked.